Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Real to Real Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and it's time once again to talk all things movies. Joining me, as always, is the awesome Paul Britton. And once again, we have joining us Kristen Smith. Thank you so much for being here, guys. What a movie weekend it was.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. The public has spoken, and
Yeah.
Barbenheimer was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, the box office numbers for these two films are the kind of thing that, Paul, you and I have been talking about how we wish we could see a return to this.
Yeah.
And amazing that in the same weekend we get to, any one of these films could have opened on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And yet people are going to the movies, man.
Dude, so okay, fourth biggest weekend ever, obviously the biggest weekend since the pandemic. I think that was what I was saying. First time ever 2 movies have made over 80 million in the same weekend. That blows my mind. Like, that really I think that says the most, is the first time ever 2 movies made over 80 million. Oppenheimer is one of the biggest top grossing R-rated movies ever for first opening week, one of the top grossing over 3-hour movies ever. Obviously Endgame is its own thing, but it's just there's just so many, like, yes, this is awesome things.
Yeah, Kristen, I'm curious to get your thoughts as well in terms of this weekend and the impact it has on what I would have seen as box office pre, during, and now post-pandemic. This is what I think a lot of studios have been waiting for, this kind of return to theaters. Is that, kind of what you thought? And just kind of give me your impressions on what we saw this weekend.
I am so happy that we've had a weekend where people dressed up to go to the movies.
Yeah.
Like, there is something to where, like, I guess when people thinking of like dressing up for a performance, like, they're thinking about, we're going to go to a musical, we're going to go to an opera. And instead we had Barbie and Oppenheimer, these two things that were so complete opposites of each other, that somehow united everyone. And the fact that, like, so many people I talked to saw both of these movies this weekend is just phenomenal. That, like, we are back in an era where, like, maybe we can do more of those crazy double features, and, like, 2 films can lift each other up.
Yeah. I was telling Paul last week after we finished the show that I was excited because it wasn't just my wife and I that had tickets to go see the film, but it ended up being all my siblings, most of my siblings and their kids. And that's kind of what I noticed, guys, was, there was large patches of people coming in groups and really getting into the spirit of the Barbie thing. And also I saw Oppenheimer the very next day, and just seeing that theater fill up, just, especially when it's the kind of film that I know doesn't always attract, the larger crowds, that, very talky, very exposition heavy. And yet it just warmed my heart to see so many people pouring into a showing at 11:40 in the, on a Sunday morning, and it's Oppenheimer. So it really was something to watch.
The movies complemented each other in the fact that they both were drawing adults to a theater. And with Barbie, adults, and they could bring their kids. And with Oppenheimer, it was like adults and, okay, we're going to find a sitter for this one, like, it just, but that's okay, and I think if Oppenheimer was on its own, it probably sits around 40 to 50 million, but just the idea of people like, yes, let's fucking do this. Let's go see both of them. Maybe not necessarily as the Barbenheimer, back to back, but we'll go see Barbie on Friday and Oppenheimer on Sunday, or that kind of calculus. And I think that it really, really worked, and it's not repeatable. Like that, the big lesson that I hope everybody understands is this is not something that you can orchestrate all the time. I hope Hollywood does not learn the lesson, although they will think they learned the lesson, that, people want nostalgia movies based on toys. That's not really what people want. People want well-written movies based on anything, and nostalgia helps. So there you go.
Whether it's toy nostalgia or World War II nostalgia.
Yeah,
This is true.
no, that's true, and I'm not,
Yeah.
100% valid. Yeah.
And then the next 2 weekends we have Haunted Mansion and The Meg. So therefore, to your point, I don't think we're going to see this again in a while.
Right.
But yeah. So as we get started with our look at both of these films here in our main segment this week, I'd like to start with Barbie. This movie, when it first came out in terms of trailers and so forth, I'm not going to lie. My first response was like, yeah, I think I'll have Paul do this one. And so it really wasn't high on my list of things that I would have wanted to see. But as the trailers came out and as the time came closer, and part of it was sort of this phenomenon we're talking about, I was curious. I was really interested. And I also made a promise to my wife that I would take her. So
No. You
guys,
also made a promise to me very
this
early
is true.
on.
This is true. This is true. And at the end of the day, this was a fun film. I got to say, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, both of you, because this was a movie that, again, would not have been on my radar on my own. And yet, what a nice little surprise this was for me. Did y'all expect this?
Go ahead, Kristen.
I mean, this was my number one most anticipated movie of the year.
Okay.
So, like, I went into it with sky high expectations. And I will confess, I saw this twice this weekend.
Okay.
I saw it on Thursday, and then I saw it again with my best friend on Sunday, already planning my third time that I'm going to go see this.
Nice.
Awesome.
But yeah, I was just wanting this movie to, like a good bit, just fully commit to how crazy the Barbie land, like, whole physics, the whole logic, everything. And to me, like, I was just grinning this entire fucking movie. Like,
Yeah.
I had just a shit-eating grin this entire movie, just like seeing everyone from Ryan Gosling, who, like, holy crap, can we talk about Ryan Gosling?
After we talk about Kate McKinnon.
Yes, her too.
So also Barbie was my number after Asteroid City, because I'm a Wes Anderson junkie. This was my number 2. So, like, we'll just call this my number 2 most anticipated movie of the year. And because it was being written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. That's it. Like, if you had told me any other 2 people were writing this movie, I definitely, even if you gave me the exact same trailer, I would have been a little, the original teaser trailer, which basically was the opening scene of the movie. I still would have been a little hesitant, even though that trailer was perfect. Like, it just communicated, this is what this movie is going to be about. And, buckle up, because, it's not going to stop with 2001 references, like we're doing all the references, including amazing Wes Anderson homages. Thank you. And just because the wonderful thing about Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig is they are absurdly intelligent and they love movies. So they get it. And so, like, they get, why does Wes Anderson frame everything the way he does? Well, because he's trying to give the sense of perspective of a stage. And so when it came time to do the montages of Barbie and Gosling, traveling, they're trying to give the perspective of a kid putting on, doing her playtime, or his or her, it's the same, it's exact kind of, mentality. So yeah, we're gonna dial up the Wes Anderson to 11 here and give you, like, the box view of this montage. And it was like, yeah, give me that, and there was just homage after homage, and so much packed into this movie. And let's not forget that it absolutely had Ryan Gosling in it. So he was good. He really
indeed.
was good.
That leads me to one of the questions I had for both of you, because as I watched this film, and part of me, it was my wife afterwards made a post on Facebook where she talked about how she's wanting to go see it as soon as possible again, which is unlike her whatsoever, because she knows that she missed so many little Easter eggs and things that the movie was referencing, which of course meant that I lost him even further. Like I wouldn't have had a frame of reference the way she would. But one of the biggest things that stood out to me about this film was the absolute immensity of the acting. And Ryan Gosling, is this the kind of film, Kristen and Paul, that can earn him at least a Golden Globe nomination? Because this is him. I've always loved his work, but this was another level.
I would say it could go to Oscar.
Okay.
Yeah, possibly.
I would love for that to happen.
There's because we have some precedent. I know the one that comes to mind for a lot of people is Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder. I mean, you also have Melissa McCarthy in Bridesmaids.
Yep. You have Marissa Tomei.
Kevin Kline in A Fish Called Wanda.
Yep. Sure. You have you have the grizzled old guy from City Slickers. It's not unheard of.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's where I'm hoping that with everyone talking about it now, that by the time this comes out into DVD, which could be maybe sometimes around Christmas, that people are still talking about this, because it's phenomenal. He committed to the bit 100%.
Oh, beyond. Yes. Yeah.
Everybody did though. That was
everybody.
That's so last time we had you on here, Kristen, we spoke about past lives, and I talked about how it was just the most perfectly written movie that I can remember seeing in a very long time, and it really was. And I feel bad for Barbie. I wish Barbie could be we could somehow find a way to make it an adapted screenplay, because this was the second best written movie of the year so far. I
think it's possible.
The script on this movie just absolutely clicks and works, and this movie absolutely hums from one-liner to one-liner. Now, one of the things working in its favor is the screenplay loves weird. One thing working against it though is it doesn't necessarily like funny weird. Fair
enough.
Kaufman straddles funny weird, but this is openly funny weird, right? This is a different,
it's bizarre. At times
so bizarre.
At times I feel like that's one of the beauties of seeing it a second time, is that the first time there is so much to adjust, because you're being thrown ideas left and right from the very beginning, that being able to really, Sergio, like your wife said, watch the second time to be able to catch all the different details, how much horse decor is in the kingdom,
which doesn't make any sense why he is horse decor,
but it's adorable.
No, absolutely.
But to catch all those things, it's such a stuffed movie that rewatches are just a breeze, because you're not only reliving all your favorite parts, but you're also finding all these new treasures, these new little Easter eggs all throughout. I was looking up a BuzzFeed list of Easter eggs that I didn't even realize were there. Wow. It is bonkers.
Sergio, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What was the youngest age of a moviegoer with you when you went and saw Barbie?
My niece was. I had two nieces. One is 7. One is 8.
I need to know how the 7 and 8 year olds reacted to it.
Well, okay, so we spoke to my youngest, Audrey. She's my youngest niece, and she, of course, she was fascinated. But it was her dad, my brother's comment that was most telling, because as we walked out, you could tell she loved it. I asked her straight up, how was it? What did you think? And she was like, "Oh my gosh, it was so much fun." And from behind me, I hear my older brother say, "There will be questions later, I'm sure." And so And so that was the thing is while this movie had a lot of things for a 7-year-old to take in and see and be fascinated by, because what a colorful palette, which is to be expected, but just the energy of it and so forth, um, it really was a film more so for adults, right?
Way more.
I've been
and
telling people it's an adult film.
yeah, no, absolutely, and I did, but at the same time, it was funny, with having that exchange with my little niece. I just was glad that she enjoyed she enjoyed it for the sake of what her familiarity with Barbie is, and came out of it feeling like she had a great experience. Plus, she was there with both her mom and dad and all of us, and so that I think was part of it. But yeah, the movie for myself, as I sat there watching, knowing who was all around me, I was like, ooh, okay. I'm glad I'm not the parent in this situation.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, so this is my favorite kind of family movie, because this
Mhm.
is a pure family movie, because it has the frenetic pace and the zaniness in Will Ferrell for the kids, and then it has another layer for teenagers,
Right.
that where teenagers, there's a lot of things going on that's the first layer of subtext that the teenagers can start clinging on to. And
Right.
then there's another layer of subtext that, kids in their 20s and 30s can start kids. Oh my God. Adults in their 20s and 30s can start clinging on to and
I mean,
picking up
sometimes I
on.
feel like a 30-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And
53.
then there's a lot of things in there that are like, if you're not a parent, you're not like, it's going to hit totally differently.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then it's caked. There's just a giant slathering of delicious political subtext on the over the whole damn thing, and it's great. It's just it's just so brilliantly layered that this it was just it's just so good.
I love, Kristen, your description of this movie as being overstuffed. When it has an almost 2-hour runtime, and here's yet another film in these recent weeks that doesn't feel that long.
Yeah.
It really was entertaining from the get go. So many clever little bits. I don't know why I didn't expect that in the beginning, as she's going through that opening routine, that there would be nothing in the cup, that there would be no water coming. It's those, because I do remember my sisters and some of my nieces playing with these dolls, and it is all imaginary. And so the fact that they leaned into those kinds of things was what made it so entertaining, and it made you want more. It made you be so tuned into everything that was going. But I got to say, if I don't mention this, because I am such a big Matchbox 20 fan, what they did with that song, that literally, when I tell you that my out loud laugh startled my wife, because it lifted me out of my chair from how funny that was.
So
and it wasn't even the scene where they're all singing. It's when it first plays on the radio.
Yeah.
I was like, I am dialed in 1000%. This is brilliant. So it was so, it's just so many things to be happy about.
And I just love the third act was just so unexpected. I just did not. Yeah. That is not where I like. I just didn't expect it. Now, and we've already established this was my number one most anticipated movie. I will say, the transition from the second act to the third act actually kind of bummed me out. And
oh yeah, it does get kind of dark, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I really had a hard time processing that transition. Like that was really difficult for me. And it's the only negative of the movie, and it is a negative. Like it gets really dark, and it's still zany, and that's the thing, is it's still zany. So it doesn't get. I don't think that the kids are picking up. I don't know, but I would imagine that there's a lot going on that the kids just aren't picking up on. That, whoa, wow, this is really bad. Like, and And it's
Like,
such
Mom,
a
what's depression?
yeah, right.
Right.
And what's the Constitution, and how are they voting to overturn the Constitution? And you know, it's just it's so
Well, I
it,
mean, it starts with what's patriarchy, you know?
yeah,
We
well,
know.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. But Ken does, and that's the thing is that you know, it's like such, you know, just it's not just patriarchy. It is
Sure, sure.
corporate branded patriarchy for dummies, which is exactly what we have right now. But we got here over like a span of like about 200 years, so it's less abrupt, whereas they go from why are corporations people to to fully American branded patriarchy, that it just was capitalistic patriarchy, that it was just like this is so it hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt. It was really quick.
But then as it begins to resolve itself, we have a brilliant piece of work by Rhea Perlman.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say, I don't know that I'd forgotten about her, but I guess I hadn't expected.
Yeah.
And I know the real Perlman of Cheers, right?
Sure.
And so this was such a sweet role.
Yeah.
And such a sweet moment. I'm curious to hear both of you, your thoughts. And Kristen, we'll start with you. What was that like to get that? Because it goes from all of this sort of commotion into this really awesome moment of quiet where we start to get some winding down of the story.
Are you talking about the character of Ruth?
Yeah.
Yes.
I did like, and this kind of goes throughout the entire movie. Like, there are several moments where it gets quiet
Mhm.
and it slows down and it breathes. And I think it easily could have been a movie that's super zany, like from beginning to end. And I love that they were able to trust themselves to like slow down a little bit. Let's breathe. Let's like add some like nice touching moments like in the middle, all throughout of all this craziness.
Mhm.
I still wrestle with the end because, like how you felt the transition to third act was very abrupt and you needed time to process, I needed to process what happens at the very end of the movie,
Yeah.
where they have this moment again and it becomes very abstract. And I remember the first time I watched it thinking, that is not what I expected it was going to go. And then still, I learned a little bit more in learning a little bit more about it, like kind of like what ideas were going into it, like who we are seeing whenever we're seeing certain like a certain montage, like near the end, like makes a whole lot more sense, but I'm not entirely sure it sticks that landing entirely for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I don't know what y'all's thoughts are, like as far as that very, very ending.
We are talking like before the coda, right?
Yes.
The sort of almost like the dream sequence, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, I agree. But it's so it's interesting because like lots of movies that you see coming out in the summer, they have set pieces that are action set pieces. Like that's what you're used to. Whereas Barbie has emotional set pieces where it's like you were saying, Kristen, they trust that we can pause for a second and take a breath. And those breaths really give you kind of like the meat of like, guys, serious, this is serious. And what's going on is serious. And the importance of Barbie is serious. I got to say, like, I'm one of the movie geek Facebook groups I'm in. A guy posted a Twitter thing that ostensibly was quote unquote funny. So the group is really big into Letterbox. I don't know if you guys know what Letterbox. Yeah, well, okay. And so one of the things you can do with Letterbox is you can set up like movie like groups, like not groups, but like like groups where you put a heading and it's like favorite action movies from 1995, and so you just put in movies that from action movies from 1995, and the heading of this group, the two movies that were in it were Barbie and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And the heading of the group was Will Ferrell spends the entire movie chasing after a blonde bimbo. And in the Jay and Silent Bob's segment, they're obviously making fun of Jay, because he's a blonde bimbo. But in Barbie, they're clearly it's like, my guy, like, and this is a left-leaning group, like, people get pretty skewered quickly if they do things like this. And it's like, my guy, did you not see the movie? Like, calling Barbie a bimbo is going entirely against everything that the movie's trying to say.
Right.
And it's just like, it's like, I get the humor. It's but bimbo, really?
Right.
Like, it's just really frustrating.
Tell me you missed the point without telling me you missed the point.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
yeah.
And that's the importance of those quiet moments, because I hope not everybody missed the point. And I think the quiet moment tries to establish sort of the reality of the situation. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, is that the imaginary character in, the person that's the ghost that haunts Mattel is the reality, is the grounding in reality, and that's interesting.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of those things where, when a movie of this type is made, it wants to have a form of message. I think this movie does it very successfully without making it feel like it's been shoehorned. I think the only reason it slightly felt like that for me was because of how manic the first two acts were. And so by the time you get to this third act, like you said, it goes dark, it has its resolution. And then you're not left with like, oh yeah, there's a message. But it does get you there, but you're so like, the roller coaster has just finished and you're like, okay, yeah, that was a cool message. And so I hope people don't lose it in the midst of it. But I think that this was a very, very successful film and what it set out to do. And one it's going to go down in the, in the annals of just impactful movies with just amazing work all around.
Can I just say, I hope it impacts beyond just pop culturally. I hope there's I just, something has to start changing shit. And I hope if it can be Barbie, that's great. Like, if every little girl grows up where Barbie is their favorite movie, and that means that we can actually make progress in this country, that would be fantastic. I would applaud that. Also, I just need to mention Kate McKinnon again. There's way too much that I need to say about Kate McKinnon. I could have an entire podcast just on Kate McKinnon in this movie.
Sure.
Go for Barbie, stay for Kate McKinnon. That's all I got.
And justice for Alan, because Michael Cera is so good.
Yeah, but oh god, he's like perfect casting, like just amazing casting there.
Yeah, my friend and I were talking about how we appreciate that Michael Cera will pick the weirdest supporting roles, like in movies like this and movies like This Is the End. And so I hope he keeps doing this stuff. I hope he's out of his like dorky teenager thing shtick that he was in for like the early 2010s.
Yeah. Well, we could very much fill this entire episode with more discussion on Barbie. As we prepare, though, to land the plane on this particular discussion, Kristen, I'd love to start with you. You know our rating scale. It's 5 tacos with a bit of guac if you want to give it us some extra love. Where would you rate Barbie on our 5 taco scale?
It is my first 5 tacos of the year. I don't give guac. I mean, I feel like I should, just because I am going to be probably seeing this maybe even a couple more times in theaters, because I just am so happy thinking about it and listening to the soundtrack and everything.
Yeah.
It's an imperfect 10 for me because I do have problems with it.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like small little things like here and there. I wished the movie was like, I wish the movie was a little bit more eloquent with its message. But also wrestling with whether it needs to be eloquent with its message.
Right.
So like, I have a lot of feelings about it, but even still, it's a 10. I recommend it to anyone and
Awesome.
can't wait to see it again with my wife.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Kristen. Paul, we'll move to you now for your thoughts on Barbie.
Yeah, I've struggled with this one because immediately after I was like, and actually not immediately after the movie, but immediately after Oppenheimer, I was like, okay, how am I going to communicate this? Ultimately, this is a 5 taco movie for me, but it's almost a 4 plus guac. So
Okay.
I'm giving it the 5 tacos, but it's a light 5 tacos. Like maybe I'm eating the 5th taco and I'm like, oh, I think I probably would have been good with 4 and maybe like a churro or something. Not churro, but like, just something smaller than a
Sure.
taco. Like,
I
like
understand.
1 bite of a quesadilla or something like that. So, but ultimately, it really is a 5 taco movie. But
Yeah.
not the
I get you.
yeah, like it's
Upon revisit, it may be different. So.
yeah, it might go up a little bit, maybe it goes down. It's like it's really teetering on that 5
Gotcha.
on that 5th taco.
Gotcha. All right. Well, for me, I'm giving it 4 tacos plus guac.
Yeah.
Again, I can't point out anything major. I just felt like the last act was in many parts quite clunky. But it just, when it was over, I know that I was very happy I'd made promises to certain folks important in my life. Paul, you included, of course. Yeah, no, I loved it. I think it's really good. Is it one I'll visit again? Likely not, but it will sit in my mind as, a film that when you pair it with what we're about to talk about in the same weekend, how do you even begin to think you're going to come out of that weekend feeling like, wow, that was 2 great films? So Barbie really hung in there for me. So, all right. Well, thank you both for your thoughts on this film. That's only 32 minutes that we took. So here we go. So let's go ahead and move right along.
We only have a 3-hour opus to talk about now, so that's fine.
Kidding. No kidding. Guys, Paul, you knew right from the outset, and Kristen, you've been around with us long enough to know the same. This is the film. This is my jam.
This is you
when it comes to movies.
Just take it, Sergio. Start us off. Start us off.
Well,
let's go.
So when I first started seeing whether it be articles or trailers about this film, and knowing it was Christopher Nolan, I didn't have to see a single trailer to know that I would be in.
Yeah.
I'm also very much into history, and World War II history is a very, World War II and the Apollo missions. Those are my 2 big, I can go down rabbit trails for days if it's a topic related to those two things. And I was always fascinated with the nuclear program in its inception, and had read about Oppenheimer and others. And so I was in right from the outset. And when it's Christopher Nolan, it's like, okay, there's a lot to anticipate and think it's going to go well. And then the casting starts to happen. And I'm like, yeah. And every trailer that came out, every month that passed, and I'm going to reference this not out of any bit of selfishness, but because it's important. When I spoke to you, Paul, about bringing my time with Reel to Real Talk to a close, I knew that this would not be before this.
Right.
Because this film was so important to me in not only the anticipation of it, but knowing that I was going to sit in a theater for however long. I didn't know until, of course, more recently, it was 3 hours. And I was like, it's going to be a happy 3 hours for me. I just know. And so, that's my mode of thinking as I enter the theater in a very, there's a theater here in Houston, can't get IMAX, at least not the mega IMAX things was filmed in.
Yep.
And so I got myself what Regal calls VIP, and it was its own separate lobby, free popcorn, free soda, all you want, and plush seating. And I sat back and I'm like, I'm here and I'm ready. And wow, this is literally for me my favorite film this year so far.
Sure.
I don't think anything's going to beat it. So
I can see that.
Yeah. So I've been dying to have this conversation with both of you, because what a movie. I mean, what a movie.
Go, Kristen.
Well, I'll just come out and say it. I did not like this movie.
Wow.
Okay.
And I was reasonably excited
Mhm.
because I have a love-hate relationship with Christopher Nolan. A lot of it just goes because there's just a lot of film bros, and sometimes if something is just like, oh man, where to take off from this? I was the subject matter I do find to be really fascinating. Kind of
Mhm.
same thing with you. Like I do find anything that involves like history of like nuclear programs, like weapons, stuff like this. Like I find the subject both terrifying and
Yep.
fascinating. And I was hoping for this to be maybe a more grounded, dramatic Nolan film that kind of unlike a lot of his other films, like Tenet being a spy film, like Dunkirk being a giant battle film,
Mhm.
like all the Dark Knights all being, a superhero movie, that this was a movie that is a straight drama. And I was
Mhm.
kind of hoping that maybe, taking this normally action oriented director and like having him do a more straight narrative, I thought would probably be would be within my wheelhouse. Like I would be on board, even joking to my friend, what if I like this more than Barbie? Like how crazy would that be? And I just don't feel it's very strong.
Okay.
Where do you find it's lacking?
It's writing and it's sound design.
Oh, wow.
Because it's writing. This is a giant sticking point I have with Nolan. He is not a strong writer to me.
Okay.
I feel that he can sometimes make really interesting choices. Like I think of Dunkirk, whose three different like temporal like sections is really fascinating. Um, and I felt like his structure in Tenet was perfect.
Right.
But for some reason, this movie is a lot of talking, and he's not a guy who's known for dialogue,
Right.
known for like maybe
Look at Dunkirk. It has like 12 lines through the whole movie.
he can do quips. Like he has awesome quips throughout Inception, throughout all of his other films.
Right.
But this one just, I don't know. I was bored throughout parts of it.
That makes me sad. To your point, Nolan as a writer is probably the best thematic writer we have today. His movies, I mentioned the layering and the texture of Barbie, and but it's like in Barbie, the layering and the text, it's like, here is basic, for kids. Here, it's very clear. It's very obvious what the text and the subtext are. Whereas Nolan is really good at taking a theme, and just and absolutely weaving it throughout. So as a thematic writer, he's usually a 10 out of a 10. And as a dialogue writer, he's, a 6 or a 7 out of 10 usually. I mean, look, just go watch the Dark Knight Rises, and that's, there is some genuinely bad dialogue in that movie, and he doesn't always peg the dialogue right. And so I hear what you're saying, Kristen. It was definitely risky for him to write something this dialogue heavy, but goddamn if those themes aren't amazing in this movie. I was riveted throughout just by the themes that he was tracing. And this was clearly a movie made at a moment in time for very obvious reasons, just from the standpoint of, if Oppenheimer can have his patriotism questioned just because he happens to love America and be left leaning, or even a leftist, what's going to happen to everybody else who happens to be a leftist and live in America? What's our future hold? And it's scary, because he's really fucking rah American, but he also understands that part of that means that, you know, we have to be held accountable for shit we do. And like the just the theme of accountability throughout this movie is just is just so I sat there during the whole 3 hours and was just absolutely mesmerized, not so much by the dialogue, but just by every interaction that was going on between the characters and their moment in time. And I did love Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
as a bad guy.
Well, yeah, and therein lies one of the things that for me made this such a strong experience, because Robert Downey Jr. owes no explanation to anyone about his acting chops.
Sure.
This movie, I think, is great if people watch it for those who think that he's Marvel Iron Man and that's
Right.
that.
Right.
This was a brilliant performance, and again, one that I hope gets recognized.
Yeah.
Because it was in the trailers. Come on, how much is he going to be in this film?
Yeah.
And yet he becomes the second most important, equally, I think, to Oppenheimer in this entire film.
Yeah.
And one of the most compelling characters. I mean, there's a turn toward the end where you realize,
ooh, this guy is not.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that turn is handled so deftly by Downey.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, but then, you know, that being said, the reason I think I enjoyed this film as much as I did is because of the interplay with all of these different characters, and even the characters that would be seen as minor. The guy who is, you know, Downey's, I don't know what the position is, but he's obviously there as sort of his what's the word, fixer, I guess, as he prepares to go into these Senate hearings.
Right.
You know, I mean,
his handler almost,
his handler. Thank you. Oppenheimer's wife. Is that
Emily Blunt?
Emily
is
Blunt.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! Like these, every one of these roles, big or small, were so well played. And while I understand, Kristen, completely the point about dialogue, I think what made it successful for me was just how well played these roles were. And so I could forgive some of what was very sort of over the top in terms of like clunky dialogue, but the acting in this film was so amazing.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, Kristen, if I may, you mentioned sound design.
Yeah.
I really am curious, because there was some things that worked for me, but I'm curious to know, you know, your thoughts on sound design overall.
It's a common critique of Nolan that his movies are so loud that I can't hear. Like, I am a little hard of hearing. Okay. And there were times where it was like a mix of, it was a loud, booming score, and the people were just mumbling in a very naturalistic way. That there were sections, and I think maybe even in Robert Downey Jr. sections, that like I was just like, what the fuck is happening? I can't hear a goddamn thing.
Okay. Gotcha.
See, because I was going to counter with the sound design during the test drop, where they made an editorial choice to go silent. I
did like that.
Yeah, that was amazing. Like that was just, and honestly, it's going to get nominated for sound design. Like it's just going to, you know, like, and it has, because of that moment, I feel like it has a strong chance to win. Like, you know, because it's such an impactful movie, and then to suck the sound out completely, it's you're so tense during that, not because you're afraid of is this going to work, but because I can't fucking believe this is going to work, and that I know exactly what's going to happen after this, and please don't work, you know, like,
and scared the shit out of the guy sitting next to me when the sound did eventually come back.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep,
so I'm going
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and one of the things that for me, you mentioned, Kristen, the booming score. There is a tone that Nolan loves to use. Like, there was literally a point towards the end of the film when there was a particular track that was being played that I'm like, you could lay that into any one of his films and find it. Like you can go to Dark Knight, you can go to Tenet, you could go and name the movie, and you're going to find that similar, like, I'm just going to call it a tone in the score.
Yeah.
That's like, I'm like, well, yeah, if I had to guess off of like 5 seconds, guess the movie by the score, I would say Nolan without without a single hesitation. So he does leave his markers all over this film, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So overall, as we start to talk about ratings for this particular film, Paul, if you don't mind, I'll start with you this time. Kristen,
Okay.
I'll hear from you next, and then I'll close out.
So now this is where I got into because after seeing Barbie, I was like, okay, that it's not 5+ guac. Because I honestly went into Barbie like this is almost a guaranteed 5+ guac for me. But there was enough in that third act that just was unsettling to me, and I didn't. But whatever. And so then I came into Oppenheimer just assuming it landed around 4+ guac or 4. But I actually liked this a little more than Barbie, just from an overall movie going standpoint, and the themes were just so rich, and it was just such a wonderfully put together film. Even though, yes, I have notes. Christopher Nolan, Emily Blunt can be awesome throughout the whole movie. You don't have to just make it one scene, but so. This one also gets 5 tacos, but it's like these are like I would definitely needed that 5th taco. Unlike with Barbie, where it's like I finished the 5th taco, but I was like I probably might have been okay with just 4.5. But this is a 5 taco movie for me. Very solid 5 tacos.
Gotcha. All right, thank you, Paul. Kristen, your thoughts on Oppenheimer?
So.
Don't make us bully you into it.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you're not going to change my rating.
Okay, good.
It's like one of those things where like other people really like something, and I don't want to sound like I'm deflating what they're talking about, even though in a lot of ways, things that y'all said, I completely disagree. Like, I think Robert Downey Jr. is probably the best acting performance of the movie. I would cut his entire portion of the movie out. Personally. Emily Blunt, I feel like, is wasted throughout much of the movie.
Right.
And
she's there for one scene at the end.
She's there for one scene, but at the same time, I'm just like, oh, it's just another pissed off wife, Christopher Nolan. Like, do better.
Yes. Agree with that.
And like thematically, there were some interesting themes I feel like did not really capitalize that much on it. Like I thought the most interesting parts for the movie were the very beginning when you're like meeting Niels Bohr and all these other like famous it's not physicians, it's physicists. Physicians.
Right.
I'm tired.
Heisenberg and Niels Bohr. Yeah.
Like learning about like them, I thought was extremely fascinating. And then parts later where the bomb is dropped and he's really wrestling with like the ethics of it, I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
But I feel like overall, I was just really disappointed. And, maybe I'll watch it again and have a much kinder view of it because, like, for example, I hated Dunkirk the first time I saw it. And then now I really do enjoy it.
That's still my favorite Nolan.
Yeah, or maybe it'll be like The Dark Knight, where I love The Dark Knight, and then now I'm kind of on it. So like, I give it two tacos. Like, there's a lot in terms of like its design, its crafts that are really, really good. Like Robert Downey Jr. in a section that I think I would not have in the movie. He does phenomenal in, and yeah, I almost walked out of this movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it was mostly just because I wanted to get to the bomb scene, of course, like the number one scene everyone said, but it was just like, man, for a 3-hour movie, I was kind of just bummed out throughout it. And I wish I liked it more like y'all did.
Well, I wish too. Sadly.
Well, and I wish to, but can it be before, because we still have a bit more show to do. So, Kristen, I really want to take, before I give my rating, I do want to take a moment to say thank you for all that you brought to this experience for me.
Hmm.
And I love that you've always been, as we all have, 100% confident in our feelings about a film. And I really want you to know that this is the kind of review, and all the ones you've done with us, that for me leaves me, it's a bittersweet thing to know that I won't be doing this regularly. But thank you for not holding back on your thoughts toward this film, because that's why I love having you around. And so
I appreciate it. Thank you.
100%.
Nothing but love from us here.
Cosign.
So. Absolutely. All right. For myself, y'all already know, it is 5 for me. I really was like, I'm going to go the whole and give it the guac, but I can't. There are some things that for me, overall, I loved it. I love the talkiness of it. I've always loved these kinds of films. There were some things with score that were kind of bugged me throughout, because it kept distracting me to other films he's done. But the fifth taco is, again, for myself, Robert Downey Jr. I just really feel like this was such an unexpected part of the film. And I can't take away anything from Killian. Why can't I remember his last name? The main actor, Killian Murphy.
Oh, we didn't talk about Cillian Murphy at all.
And I know, but he's awesome.
We barely talked about Margot Robbie and Barbie, though. So.
Right. This is true.
Oh, very true.
Yeah, but
But let's just do that right now. Margot Robbie absolutely is the front runner for Best Actress. She was amazing. Cillian Murphy absolutely is the front runner for Best Actor. And Kristen, I would assume you would agree that that's, even if you didn't care for the movie, you would agree that that's the case, right?
No, I liked him. I liked him a lot in the role. Great hat acting and pipe acting.
Yeah.
And
but
I do think he did a good job.
Yeah.
He was one of the shining parts of the movie for me, was that he was consistently really good throughout it.
Yeah. For me, I've seen him in so many things, but I just, for the first few minutes of this film, I couldn't get Peaky Blinders out of my head and the difference in accent. But no, it really, for me, it all came together. And so make sure you check out Barbie and Oppenheimer, available in theaters now. Yeah. Don't miss it, because you'll be doing yourself a disservice. So
for sure. These both need to be seen in a theater. Both
Absolutely.
of them are
no doubt.
Seeing it with a crowd, my first Barbie crowd was not really that great. Not many people really laughed at it, but the second Barbie crowd was amazing. People were really into it. So see this while people are still going to the theaters.
Yeah.
To get that experience.
I'm hoping I can be back in San Antonio before it's out of its theater run for IMAX, because I really want to see this in IMAX. Yeah. Oppenheimer. So
yep.
All right. Well, Kristen, you gave Paul homework. And as we get to his weekly segment called What the Hell Did I Just Watch? I'm going to briefly share before I turn it over to y'all. I watched it too. And Paul, here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So Kristen definitely understood what the assignment was when it's What the Hell Did I Just Watch? Time.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say, I come into movies for What the Hell Did I Just Watch with varying levels of understanding of what the movie's going to be about, varying levels of expectations. Sometimes I know absolutely nothing. Sometimes I know a little bit. It's, in the culture, I've heard about it before. 8.5 being a great example of that. When I did Fellini's 8.5, I'd heard so much about it already, but I knew also it would work for this segment. Shin Mass Rider, I knew nothing. I went in 100% blind, and that is the wrong fucking thing to do with this movie. There is no way, because I spent so much time at the start of this movie wondering, what the fuck am I watching?
But in the best way, I'm sure.
Until I was about a half hour in. Okay, so the problem is the opening scene is one of the most bloody scenes I've ever seen in a What the Hell Did I Just Watch movie, and that's saying a lot. Okay, and I'm watching it and I'm like, holy shit, what is this? And my first thought was, okay, so basically this is like Quentin Tarantino's #1 movie of 2023. I guess that's what I'm watching right now. And then I'm about a half hour in, and I'm like, okay, well, no, this is actually what would happen if Quentin Tarantino was given $2 million and told to go make a kids movie. And then I realized, holy shit, this is off of an IP, isn't it? Like, this isn't. I suddenly realized that this movie is fucking brilliant if you have any relation to the 1960s or 70s. I had no idea when the show was. I was like, I bet this is an homage or a remake or something to a 1960s, 70s Japanese kids show. And sure fucking enough, that's exactly what it was. And I had no fucking idea. I was like, this movie is absolutely bonkers if you don't have any relationship to the original show. Like, it's insane. The story is that there's a guy, there are people that wear masks that become auths, basically become techno people, like we'll just say that are given powers of various insects. Usually, sometimes it's a reptile as well. And it's just about them battling each other. And there's only really one good one that we're aware of. And he's the masked rider, and he has grasshopper powers, and he's trying to battle the people with wasp powers and
bat powers.
Yeah, all these other different powers, because they have they're different, kinds of cyborg people. And God bless this, it's fucking batty as fucking hell. I can't even imagine what the original show's like. I bet it's super fun though. Like, the guy
I would
who made
assume so.
Yeah.
I've never seen the original thing. I went in blind like you did.
Oh wow, really? Oh my god! Like, that's crazy. I would have assumed that that this was just something that like a friend of yours watched and you clung on to, or you found some way. That's amazing that you went in, because I knew there was an Ultraman movie made a couple years ago, and I didn't realize it was by the same essentially people that made this. And I definitely watched Ultraman when I was a kid. So
we should do Shin Ultraman, because Shin Ultraman
I haven't watched it yet. So
is probably in my top 10 this year.
Okay,
Oh.
I gotta watch Shin Ultraman then. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, the only reason why I saw this movie is because throwback to our second episode of Reel to Reel, we did Shin Godzilla.
Yep.
And Hideki Anno, who is the director of that movie, also the creator of Evangelion, if you know that anime.
No.
He is the one who directed this.
Okay.
And that's why it feels so much like a live action anime, that everyone is talking in really stylized ways, and it looks so chaotic like an anime.
Well, look, if anybody's has seen the 60s and 70s era live action Japanese shows like Ultraman, Masked Rider, what's the other one? Jeez. Anyway.
Are you talking about kind of original Power Rangers, like that kind of era?
Yeah, right. Well, but pre-Power Rangers, Power Rangers was the follow-up to this. Yeah. I mean, it's such a beautiful homage to that stuff, but it's weird as fuck, man. This had to have been the weirdest ones of them all. Like, I can't even fathom what the original show was like.
Yeah. All I'll say is it was so wacky, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop watching. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating.
Kristen, A++.
Yeah.
You really understood what I was going for.
You captured
this
the spirit.
Yeah. So in the end, this is definitely going to be Quentin Tarantino's favorite movie of 2023. I have no doubt.
Yeah, I was also the same way. Really surprised by how bloody it was.
Yeah,
out of nowhere,
right from the outset.
Yeah, right. But then it so it's so bloody on the outset, and then you're an hour in, and it's there's just no way anyone under the age of 10 is disliking this, and there's no way anybody over the age of 10 is not laughing at how campy ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
Like, so it has to be for kids. But that opening scene was so fucking bloody. I didn't know what to make of it. That's
Yeah.
Well, so bloody, and then when you get to the final showdown fight,
yeah,
where then it just becomes two people in leather suits wrestling to the ground.
By the way, hot. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. It was quite something. So Paul, I'm so glad that that for this one at least I was able to watch, and I've been waiting for your thoughts. So thank you as always. And Kristen, thanks for the homework.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the homework.
Yeah.
All right, Kristen, I'm going to ask you if you can just stay with us till the end. We're almost done. I promise my next segment, last one, is very quick.
Good.
Because and I believe Kristen, you know that that I've been doing a segment here. My wife has been picking the movies I've seen for several weeks now, giving me movies that she's seen and enjoyed, and making sure that I watch them at some point. And so for the last one, the very last Cinema by Jen, I had to watch, and I waited till the very end. I had to watch Bring It On.
Yes. Movie fucking rules.
Oh my goodness. This is just not my jam. For some girls, this was their Oppenheimer.
Sure.
Absolutely. And for the time, I get exactly that. And I think, and this is the first time that I have not had an opportunity to discuss the film with Jen prior to the show.
Oh wow! Okay.
And so last week I did not at all enjoy Bridesmaids. Didn't finish it. Bring It On would have been that, except that I was like, I'm away from home, and I cannot give her my thoughts on the film without watching the entire thing. And so it was tough. It was a tough watch for me because it is so over the top in terms of not just the dialogue but the characters, and it's intended to be that way. I get that.
Right.
But it was just so cringy for me to watch this and get from it what its message must have been like. But I don't know. Maybe that was it wasn't intended to be anything.
Sergio,
serious.
Sometimes you have to solve racism through cheering.
I hate you. And you know what this movie, what this made me think? I was just like, what is that series of movies that's about dancing? Step It Up or Step Up? Step Up.
Yeah.
This movie made me thankful that was not on her list, and so I was like, okay, at least it wasn't that. So.
Bring It On is way better than Step Up, like by light years.
And this has generated a ton of, apparently, I don't know if you call them sequels, but there's a franchise now.
Basically,
It was funny. It had its moments.
It does have its moments. It didn't
age well,
but
but. And so I saw your reaction, Kristen. I got to ask you, like, your thoughts on this film. I mean,
it's a lot of fun. Like, this was something that I think, like, my sisters, this was like the kind of movie they were watching when they were teenagers. So, like, I got to watch it as well.
Gotcha.
So, like, this makes me very nostalgic for, like, being a kid and, like, watching this sort of stuff for the first time. So I love it. And then I watched it again as an adult, and I'm like, wow, this reminds me of the 90s. I am going to buy this on Blu-ray.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, there you go.
It deserves to be bought.
I got you.
In high definition.
In high definition, I was going to say.
There's no 4K.
Well, I can honestly say that, I'm glad Jen put it on the list, and, I now feel like, okay, I did 15 of these, and her taste and mine are very different. But it was a lot of fun to do it. So
there you go.
All right. So as we begin to wrap up this week's episode, I just want to say a couple of quick thank yous. Kristen, it means a lot to me. I know this is not a full goodbye, Paul. You're going to carry the banner, and you and I have agreed I'll visit now and then. But before I get to Paul, Kristen, I want to say thank you to you very personally. Episode number 2 will always be special to me because you came on and were part of this journey for me. So thank you so much for having visited so often over the course of the last 4 years. It means a ton to me. Paul,
Yep.
what can I say? You were episode number 10, and it's like we never looked back. And so it's been an absolute blast. And so as I prepare to sign off as the full-time host, Paul, it blesses me tremendously that you've decided to keep going. And so I look forward to Dune.
Yes.
And I believe there's at least one other. I'm sure you'll let me know.
Yeah. Well,
but,
Flowers of the Flowers
there you
of
go.
the yeah.
Yeah, the new Scorsese. And so
Yeah, the new
and
Scorsese for sure.
I know, Kristen, the door's always open. So I hope that we all get together soon at some point. So thank you both. I love you both tremendously. And I just can't say thank you enough for the journey that this has been. So I appreciate you guys.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for laying the groundwork, Sergio. I'm honored that you let me hold on to the keys for you.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for having me so many times. It's been always a pleasure.
And it was
always
never
something
enough.
I look forward to.
It was never enough, Kristen. If there's a movie that you want to talk about, you and me always. I will always have you on every week. It doesn't matter. And if there's some random shit or just random like crazy foreign film that you just want to talk about, even if it's from like 1950 and you just discovered it and you want to talk about it with somebody, I will have you on the show and we will do it. So
awesome.
Definitely. Okay.
Awesome.
Definitely will.
Well, I will keep promoting this thing until just forever. So, all right. Of course, I have to say thank you to all of you who have watched this consistently over the years. I thank you for always being part of the journey. And as I prepare to say goodnight, and we all prepare to say goodnight, we remind you, as we always do, you're awesome, you're amazing, and the world's a better place because you are in it. We'll see you next time on Real to Real Talk. Good night, everybody.